The way this is going to work is that each of the members of our panel here are going to have a bit of a time here at the podium to share their views. And the idea is not that we're supposed to agree with each other, but that you're going to hear people sharing candidly and, I think, transparently their own thoughts, reflections from the decade upon decade upon decade that each of we have spent in this field on this subject. And then we'll have a little bit of time for some discussion towards the end. So let me waste no more time in introducing Bob Butler. Bob, in my view, is the leading figure in our field. He's currently the president and CEO of the International Longevity Center. Whether through his many appearances in front of the Congress, his interaction with presidents, with world leaders, Bob has worked tirelessly for decades to push population aging issues into the public discourse. He's a gerontologist, psychiatrist, coined the term ageism back in 1968. I don't know if there are many others of us in the field who have won Pulitzer Prizes. Bob's book, Why Survive, is what triggered many of us into this field. It's still a classic. He's also served as the founding director of the National Institute on Aging, of the National Institutes on Health. He has a brand new book coming out. It's the only book that I'm going to pitch here this morning. It's called The Longevity Prescription. More about this will be found at the exhibit hall. He's created the nation's first department of geriatrics at Mount Sinai Medical School. He often consults with television and radio throughout the world. He's one of the great beings of our time. If you'll join me in welcoming Bob to the podium. Have a good one.
Thank you very much, Ken. And thank you also for that excellent introduction to this whole topic this morning. Let me start out by saying it is a triumph, not a tragedy. This extraordinary increase in longevity. 30 additional years of life in the 20th century. And we've adapted rather well, in fact, during that century. There are a range of philanthropic and for-profit institutions that provide services. There is the extraordinary contribution of new institutions like the Administration on Aging and the National Institute on Aging. There are the great federal programs of Social Security and Medicare. In short, we have already shown enormous adaptive capability. But the real question today is, can we afford old age? And I would point out right away that the real issue is health care. It is health care that is so expensive and so costly, and particularly the commercial health insurance industry. It is not population aging and longevity yet that are responsible for the rising health costs. It's been the rise of technology, important for us all, new drugs, but also the commercial insurance industry. So I want to draw upon two fields this morning, two domains, to discuss a more promising set of leads that we can have. One is from the world of biology, and the other for the world of economics. To begin first with biology, increasingly it is becoming clear that in mammalian species, close to humans, we're able to slow aging while at the same time, happily, to delay the onset of age-related conditions. That's marvelous, 2 for 1. And the prospect can be particularly made evident, I think, when we consider the issue of cancer. We have spent billions of dollars since 1971 in efforts to deal with cancer, and yet we've only had a 5% reduction in mortality rates. Well, the truth is that 80% of all cancer occurs after 60 years of age. If we were able to slow aging, and particularly if we follow the Gompertz logarithmic curve, and we gain 7 years, 60 would be the new 53. We would significantly delay the onset of cancer, perhaps more successfully than the whole cancer enterprise so far has reached. But as you know, most of the institutes of the National Institutes of Health are disease mission oriented. Very important. Been great success with heart disease, for example, a 60% reduction in deaths from heart disease and stroke. But we have not devoted resources to the underlying biology of aging itself. We spend about $200 million out of about $30 billion, that's with a B, at the National Institutes of Health, in understanding, unraveling what it is that happens in our bodies that predisposes to disease as we grow older, to Alzheimer's, cancer, and the like. Well, how now are these new biological methods materializing? As you know, since 1935, it's been known that caloric restriction has a significant effect in extending life. But the point now is we're beginning to look at pharmacological equivalents, ways of being able to secure the same benefits that caloric restriction provide, but to do so in a way that actually will work. So too, the genetic interventions which have extended life. We have to understand the gene products of the proteins and put them to work on behalf of delaying aging and age-related diseases. All of this has led me to feel and to recommend over the last several years that we put aside 1% of Medicare expenditures using the base age 2005. That would mean we would put $3 billion new dollars into the field of aging, $1 billion of which would be devoted specifically to the basic biology of aging. A second billion would go to the interrelationship between aging and age-related conditions. And the third would relate to the socioeconomic, the behavioral, the many other factors, including longitudinal studies, clinical trials, the development of well-trained people to carry out research. The second domain that I want to discuss is the economic domain. We all know that as societies become richer, if they have benign governments, they're most likely, in fact, to provide benefits for their people. But that the reverse is true, that as societies live longer and more healthily, the new wealth is generated as a new idea. Bloom and Canning, for example, at Harvard and Belfast, Ireland, have shown that those nations that have a 5-year advantage in life expectancy actually have developed greater wealth. Well, there are many ways to think about this, of course. Since 1962, at least, we've known that more money goes from within families in America, go from older people to young than the reverse. We know, too, that, as James Smith at the Rand Corporation has shown, that very, very striking fact that healthy children become healthy adults, usually have better education, better jobs, save more, invest more, and have a more productive old age. And in congressional hearings, which we did in 1979, we dramatized the fact that just staying in the workforce longer made a huge difference in the solvency of Social Security. Just a matter of months or a year made a great difference. In fact, we are going to be issuing tomorrow, my International Longevity Center and the Harris Polls are issuing a report of study which we undertook in January, which shows that older people themselves and the public at large do believe that we're simply going to have to work longer. And in studies we did at the National Institutes of Health back in the 1950s and 60s, we actually found that was a good thing. People actually live longer and better who had something to get up for in the morning, something that made a difference. The silver industries is another very important fact that relates to the economic aspect of why population aging and longevity create wealth. Just as we had a youth market in the 1960s, we have the age market. Financial services, healthcare, hospitality, travel, living arrangements. William Nordhaus at Yale University, a distinguished economist, made an interesting calculation that the gain in life expectancy over the last 100 years is greater than the total produce of the gross national product during that same period. So we're talking big time with respect to the capacity for us to, in fact, generate wealth with age. And now to turn the dependency ratio upside down. In Europe and in Japan, for example, more attention is being able to devote to a smaller number of children, to provide them to move on the way to greater generation of wealth as they move through life. The higher savings for children means we can have a greater investment. And of course, with all of that, women have joined the workforce. So where are we with regard to the health cost issue? That, to my mind, is the big problem. The commercial health insurance industry. We spend twice as much on our gross domestic product on health care as a consequence of the private commercial health insurance industry. Europe spends 8 to 10%, and they cover everybody. We spend close to 17+%, and we do not include all. In fact, there are nearly 40 million or more people that are not covered at all. Of every dollar you think you're spending on health care, 20 cents of it is going to administration, marketing, selling, profits. Does this make sense for us? This is the big problem, is the problem of health care, and the need to make sure that we, in fact, do something soon, because we have dropped in life expectancy in the world from 11th place to 42nd place. Isn't that astonishing? This over the last several decades. People in Jordan live longer than we do. Probably not totally a consequence of the inadequacies of our health insurance. Also probably related to issues of racism, related to poverty, AIDS, and other conditions. But nonetheless, very telling that from birth we have this dramatic change in life expectancy. And this, presumably, the richest country in the world. We have a lot to do. We have to solve the terrible problem of Alzheimer's disease and the other huge tragedy of old age, because there are tragedies, the other being frailty. We must address these, which means, again, both the use of our economy and the use of our research enterprise. We have to transform society, as Ken so beautifully described. We must do it, and I'm convinced we will. Thank you very much.